Welcome, viewers. Thank you for tuning in to Diversity Dignified. And tonight I have two wonderful guests from our community, both from different parts of Maine, which we'll be discussing the differences between being in southern Maine and being in northern Maine. Tonight we're going to address my two-part series. We're going to address bullying again. As you know, last month I did that, and then this month I want to do it with the additional burden of being a person of color. That is an additional burden. I have some really outlandish statistics that I got from the Southern Poverty Law Center in 2015. One statistic that really troubled me was that the most discriminated category in the United States is the LGBT population. In particular, transgender women of color are especially targeted for violence. 5 out of 10 LGBT people will attempt suicide. That's just off the charts. It's jumped, for transgender people, that suicide attempt has jumped from 47% to a rate of 78%. It's out of control. 90% of LGBT people in the spectrum feel that they are discriminated against in jobs, and in dozens of states it's still legal to discriminate against transgender people. And probably the most alarming statistic, as far as I'm concerned, is that there are several states in which it is legal to use fear as a defense to kill a transgender person. April is Child Abuse Awareness Prevention Month, and I feel that that's tied in with bullying. So we're going to address that. We're going to address, hopefully, these folks are also people of faith and how they came to terms with either their sexuality or their gender identity, or both, and remedy that in terms of their faith. So without further ado, I'm going to launch into this. They're just keeping in mind that you are our allies and that these folks are being particularly brave, really putting themselves out there for us tonight. Thank you so much for being on the show this evening. Melly, I'm going to start with you. Okay. I have a tradition here on my show. Would you mind starting with your name, your pronouns, and would you give viewers a little bit of your coming out story or your transition story? Sure,
Definitely. So yeah, my name is Melly. I am going by they, them pronouns. And my coming out story actually really kind of brings all those things together that you were talking about. Yeah. So my culture, my faith, and my orientation and gender are kind of all mixed up in a ball. But to give a short version of the story, I chose to go to a religious college.
Okay.
And I met a fantastic young woman there, and we started dating. And the school did not like that. And so we got kicked out of the school because of our relationship.
Okay.
And so it was not a good situation.
Sure.
And I had to call my family and basically like pick me up from school. I am gay, and got kicked out of school because of it.
Okay.
And it was not a fun experience.
Sure.
So from there, my parents picked me up, brought me home, and tried to put me in like a corrective therapy.
Oh. Okay.
So that is, you know, they're trying to talk you out of being gay. This isn't real. And that's still going on. I think a lot of people think that's a thing of the past.
Right.
This all happened within the last decade.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So we tried to do that, and obviously didn't work. And so I eventually moved to Maine to kind of get away from my troubles that were like where my family was and such.
Okay.
But as a result of getting kicked out of school, my religious community, basically nobody from that school, maybe a handful of people from that school still talk to me.
Okay.
Those are great friends, but the majority of people would not talk to me anymore.
Yeah.
My church community and which is very tied into my culture because I went to a Spanish-speaking church.
Okay.
Many of those people, you know, tried their best to you know, be loving towards me, but there's definitely a shift.
Sure.
And maybe some judgment that they have towards my family or my parents.
Can I ask what the religion is that you're talking about?
Right. So I was raised in Christianity. My family is Baptist, so very conservative.
Sure.
And yeah, I feel that my culture is very tied into it, like I said, because it's a Spanish-speaking church. Everybody who went there was Puerto Rican. There were a few Southern American people.
Okay.
But for the most part, my community and my faith were very tied into one another.
They're very interwoven. Yes.
So I came to Maine kind of questioning all those things. Do I have any ties to my community anymore? Do I have any ties to my faith anymore?
Right.
And that's kind of, I mean, we can talk more later about how I resolved those, but that's my coming out story.
So that in a nutshell, but we will get back to that. Okay, thank you, Melly. Brooke, same question, your name, your pronouns, and I know you don't feel that you have a transition story per se, but that it was leading up. So you tell it in your words and language that feels safe to you.
My name is Brooklyn. I go by Brooklyn Carter all the time. Pronouns, she is fine with me. I'm always okay with that. No big coming out story. I think my parents just knew. I grew up playing sports, never really wore dresses unless I was going to church, and at a certain age I just was like, I'm not putting these dresses on anymore, and never really had to tell my parents that I was a lesbian. They just knew, and you know, so.
And you're a person of faith as well.
Absolutely.
So was that tied into your culture at all? As when you came out, how was your family in terms of being supportive of you?
Oh, my family has always been supportive. It's sad to say that I'm just not one of those people that ever had issues with my family to where I had to turn, you know, a different way. They were very supportive. My church was very supportive. I grew up a Christian also. In a Pentecostal church.
Okay. Now I think of Pentecostal as being kind of strict.
All right. You grew up Baptist, so we kind of the opposite. Baptist people are a little bit more strict and service-wise.
Okay.
They're on time. I think
they're on time.
They're on time.
Always on time.
Always on time. I feel like it's less music in the Baptist church. They're more into hymns, maybe.
Pentecostal, a little charismatic.
We're more upbeat, a lot of hand clapping, shouting. So.
When you're in your church, was it love the sinner, hate the sin? It sounds like it was in your church. Love the sinner, hate the sin. How about your church? Was it supportive?
Very supportive, still to this day. Yes, they're always gonna hate the sin.
They think of it as a sin.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And how does that work when you are the sin?
I don't know. They just, I can't even say that when they embrace me and give me hugs and kisses that it's even phony.
No, you know it's real.
I know it's real.
Yes.
I think they have just come to the terms to accept me for who I am.
Well, it sounds to me, I mean, in my opinion, if you're going to have that mentality, love the sinner, hate the sin, I don't believe it is a sin. But if it is, it sounds like they're not differentiating what sins are sins. Just love you all, right? Because we're all sinners. So I think of that as actually being kind of an elevated way of thinking of it.
Right.
If you're going to think of it as a sin, then love everybody who's sinning, right? So we'll look at it that way. So let's just move on a little bit here. Melly, you're from Southern Maine. Well, not from, but you're living in Southern Maine right now. And I think probably folks of privilege, we want to get it. We want to understand. What's it like to being, your gender is ambiguous. You are clearly a person of color. What's a day-to-day experience for you like here in Maine, Southern Maine?
Right. So it depends. Honestly, I could be in one spot and be totally fine and take a 10-minute drive and be totally not okay.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a city, lots of diversity, and never had any issues.
Okay.
Upon moving to Maine, easily within the first month, I had my first experiences with just walking into a place and immediately feeling it was not safe.
Yep.
Or people making it clear that it was not safe.
Give us more.
And
Yep.
I mean, I went to a store with my partner at the time. We walked in and I was like, we need to leave immediately. The looks that folks were giving us and stuff, I couldn't tell if it was because I was a person of color, if it was because, you know, we were an obviously queer couple, if it was because of my gender expression. I didn't even want to think about what the cause was.
Right.
I just knew that it was time to get in the car and drive away.
So it was that unsafe?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And that was within my first month of moving to Maine.
Yep.
And that was when I said I need to get to Portland, because there was all this diversity, lots of queer-friendly places, it was obvious. But in my place of work, for example, I've had instances where, you know, and I have to say I work at a fantastic place.
Yep.
Everyone's been nothing of supportive,
Yep.
using the right pronouns for me, doing their best to, you know, accommodate me in any ways possible. But customers don't always get it when you have, you know, a job that's in customer service. And I had a customer who would come in daily and would make comments about my appearance. And it wasn't, you know, the person wasn't trying to like make any advances on me. They would be like, why do you wear a tie all the time? Or, you know, my hair is pretty long now, but why do you keep your hair so short? It looks terrible. Like, just
Thinking that you appreciate this commentary of your appearance.
yes, yeah, thinking that they were invited to comment on my appearance.
Right.
And so it got so bad, and it was a daily occurrence that I spoke to my manager, and at the end of the day, the manager was like, if it's between keeping you as an employee or keeping this person as a customer, we value you as an employee and we want to protect our employees. And so I was able to have a conversation, and the commentary stopped. So it was, you know, and that instance is a positive instance where someone who was a person of privilege was able to go to bat for me. And it made a difference. It made a change.
I'm glad. You know, Melly, it just occurs to me that you do identify as non-binary with they and them pronouns. And I'm keenly aware of the fact that my viewers are not as familiar with.
Right.
Can you explain a little bit about your gender identity for viewers? Just keeping in mind they probably have no clue.
Definitely.
Yep.
So the gender binary is male and female.
Yes.
And a lot of times when we think about transgender, we think about someone who is perhaps born male and always known that they were male, but they were, you know, their sex was marked as female.
Right.
At birth.
Right.
And so they think about people going from, you know, being recognized as a female for some part of life to male. Well, for me, I am neither, and I am both, essentially. So I fully acknowledge like the masculine parts of myself, and I fully acknowledge the feminine, and I like celebrate both.
Okay.
But being called she or her feels just uncomfortable and not correct for me.
And what about he and him? Would that feel the same?
He and him feels uncomfortable for me as well.
Okay.
So I get a good handful of both.
Yep.
So I'm not out to educate everybody. I'm not out to correct everybody. But they, them makes me feel the most comfortable. Or if people struggle with that, I ask them to just simply use my name instead of any pronouns. It just sometimes makes things easier for folks.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that, because I really want people to understand more about being fluid and non-binary. It's an issue that keeps coming up, and we need to address it.
Definitely.
So, great.
Yeah, it's the least talked about.
Yep.
I think, thing going on right now.
Well, that's good. So going back, that's good this person of privilege, though, was receptive. It's too bad it had to come to that, and that even that it had to take a while for you to feel that you could even challenge this person and get some help, which I find interesting, because my hunch is that if you weren't used to some level of racism, you'd probably nip it in the bud right away.
Right.
But you've almost been conditioned in my mind.
I think that's part of the side effect of being kicked out of school. It's kind of, you know, I think hindsight is 20/20. Now I think if someone tried to do that to me, I would do this. I would take legal action, this and that.
Right.
But my self-esteem was so low because of that experience that it was kind of like, well, you know, you kind of take the victim, like, you know, I get where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, bullying is a routine part
Of life.
for people of color and for people in the LGBT community.
Absolutely.
It's a routine part of life.
I agree.
And so you pick your battles.
Yes. Brooklyn, you are in northern Maine. You're probably the only person of color there. Maine is the whitest state in the country. I think that needs to be said right up front.
Yep.
And that folks of color are predominantly in the southern, probably Portland area. What's this like for you? Because you're a person of color and you're dark. You're a dark person of color.
Can't miss me.
Yes.
I mean, yes, I am probably the only black person that lives in my town. And the further up north you go, the less black people you see.
Sure.
I do go to school and work in Augusta, so you very rarely see black people, but they'll pop around every now and then. It's bad.
Tell us about it.
Racism is bad up that way. And
Some of it may be just simple ignorance, and some of it's a lot more complex. Let's be right.
Yeah,
All
some
right.
people are just
Tell us-
outright with it,
Yeah.
and some people are, I don't know. I can't even like explain sometimes the ignorance of people, especially this day and age.
Give me
I
a
think-
story. Last time it happened.
My former employer, I'll stick to this story. I wanted to further my education at that time and get ahead in life and do something more than what I was doing at the time. And you know, one of my supervisors there, she basically came out and told me that you're not the right skin color to get ahead in life. This is where you belong, and this is where you're gonna stay if you're gonna
dear.
work for us.
Yeah. Oh.
So I was a little puzzled, and I you know, sometimes you gotta laugh to keep from crying, because yeah, my feelings was hurt. But when you love yourself and you know that you're bigger than that type of person, you know how to contain something like that. So I went into more detail to ask her, you know, why do you feel that way? And she said, all I'm gonna tell you is I don't have anything against black people, because my husband is black and my children are biracial. So once again, I laugh and I go, is this supposed to make me feel better? Because it really doesn't, you know. So I just felt like it was time for me to go, because this lady was just not gonna let me get ahead, not for that company anyway.
Right.
So I think that was, you know, I deal with racism every day at the job I'm at now. It's bad.
And also, in addition to the racism, your gender expression is pretty masculine. Do you get it from that angle, or do you not even know, or do you just expect to be discriminated against?
I have just learned to ignore so much and to look past so many things. Something can happen and someone else will notice, and I won't even notice because I'm just going on. So,
well, it's one thing to go to a cashier and have a little bit, but when you're talking about getting ahead in your job,
right,
that can't be, well, I'm just going to let it go.
That is true. But I mean, Matthew, to be honest, in order for me to get ahead, I have to put the ignorance of other people and how they feel because of my race, my sexuality, which none of that has anything to do with my job. You know what I'm saying? So it's some things you can brush under the rug. Racism, you really can't brush under the rug. It comes to a point where what do we do about this?
Right.
You know, so, I mean, most of the time I take it to my superiors.
Sure.
You know, and
Sure.
we come together and we figure out something.
Okay. Well, I'm going to launch into something because we're trans, all of us. Well, you're not identifying as trans, but your gender expression is masculine. I think of the bathroom issues going on and the bullying going on about bathroom issues. And I wonder, can we compare those, in your opinion, to racism, this bathroom dilemma? And I'm going to get real personal. Which bathrooms do you folks use? Because that's got it. Whether you think, oh, it doesn't impact me, not everyone around you going to feel that way. And they don't care that you're a lesbian and that you're transgender, because your expressions are both masculine. And yet I can probably tell that you are female-bodied. That doesn't make that your gender, but that you're female-bodied. And if someone's going in the bathroom and they see you as a woman, or what are you doing in here? And then if you're in the male bathroom, I can almost see them saying, what are you doing in here? And also I think of the trans bathroom issues, which I think are really a deflection of far more important issues. But you know, we segregated bathrooms according to race, and it almost feels like we're going in that direction with gender. Melly, do you get afraid? I mean, the bathrooms, let's talk about it.
Right, so Southern Maine is fantastic because there's a lot of gender-neutral bathrooms.
Sure.
And that's been really helpful. I usually make a beeline for those if I can find them.
The gender-neutral.
Gender-neutral bathrooms.
Okay.
But they're not everywhere.
I was going to say, they're not everywhere. So.
It's true, and I do travel a lot. And airports are just the worst.
Yeah.
They're just the worst. So I would definitely say the safest option is the women's room.
For you, okay.
Yes, you're a lot less likely to get questioned or anything. Usually women will let you do your business. Men, on the other hand, feel like you're questioning their masculinity if you go in the men's room.
So you feel a little bit safer using the female bathroom. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you
push
scared?
comes
Do you
to
have
shove.
any trepidation at all when you do use it, though, or?
So far, no, because I haven't had any negative experiences.
Good.
But, you know, you never know. I mean, something could happen. You never know when somebody might say something. They might just feel brave that day, you know.
Right.
But for the most part, I would say the women's room has been a safer place for me.
Okay. Brooke, how about you? Because you're not just your presentation in terms of, but your energy is pretty masculine. So
I think that's why people tend to, I don't want to say be afraid of me, but you gotta stand up for yourself, and nobody's gonna tell me what bathroom I can use. I think it's a silly thing to separate people from using whatever bathroom they want to use. Okay, fine. If it's an issue, make more handicap bathrooms then. Either sex can go.
I agree. I actually think we need
either sex can use-
trauma-accessible bathrooms.
I
Right?
agree.
Yeah.
I
If
agree.
this is a trauma issue, then let's make trauma-sensitive changing rooms, trauma-sensitive bathrooms.
That will solve the problem.
But what bathrooms do you use?
I use, to be honest, depending on how bad I gotta go, I will use either one.
Okay.
Yes, there are times where I will go in a women's bathroom because maybe that's the first one I'm walking past, and I'll laugh because a lady will be coming out the bathroom, or she'll be going in with me and look at me and go, "Excuse me, sir, you know you're going in the wrong bathroom," and I'll look at her and laugh, and that'll make me want to use it even more. And you know, like, who doesn't know what bathroom they going in?
Right,
Man or woman.
Right.
I mean, the sign is on the door. So most of the time it's just whichever one is available. I really like using the men's bathroom because men go in the bathroom, use the bathroom, and get out. Women, they're in the bathroom, they got to put makeup on, they talking to their friends, they holding up the line. So, I mean, it's fairly quick to use the men's room.
Yeah.
But I pretty much go in whichever one. It
So
makes
do
me
you have
never
any
mind.
trepidation at all? Have you
No.
been harassed at all?
I've never been harassed ever using the men's
Have you
room.
beaten anyone up in the bathroom lately?
No.
You have any intention of?
No.
Okay. Just kidding.
I'm pretty much okay. Women,
Okay.
the issue is mostly with women.
Okay.
Never with men.
Okay. Let's talk about bullying now, because that was kind of the original. And you had some thoughts, because April is, Child Abuse Awareness Month. And I'm wondering, because you grew up in, it sounds like some of you grew up in religious schools, or?
I did.
You did, and did you as well?
I went to
Brooke?
public schools.
You went to public. What was your experience in growing up in a religious school, going through these?
I think, yeah, definitely as a younger kid, I had a more masculine expression. There were uniforms at my school. Girls were supposed to wear skirts. I did not. And that was it was the uniforms, it was the rules. As many times as I could get away with not doing it, I did.
Okay.
And definitely the other kids had things to say about it. There was teasing. I don't think I ever encountered anything too crazy. I mean, I don't, at the end of the day, the things that we see today, there wasn't cyberbullying, there wasn't this. But
you did have some.
Yeah, there were people were, I think, challenged by my gender expression even at a young age.
And what did the teachers want to do? Did they try to feminize you at all? Give you any lectures? Anything?
Surprisingly, my teachers were very accepting.
Okay.
And my mom did work at the school, so maybe she had a hand in
sure.
People taking it a little bit easier on me.
Yeah.
That may have come into play, but what I have been thinking about, and maybe it's a little bit different than what I'm experiencing, but what I'm hearing from other people in the community, and maybe some of what I've experienced myself, I think really does tie into abuse. I would say a lot of the bullying that I've experienced has just been verbal. It hasn't been physical. But certainly if this was somebody that I knew closely, it would be considered verbal abuse. But if it's someone you don't know, it's suddenly titled bullying. I mean, is that where the line is? If you know somebody, it's abuse, and if you don't, it's bullying? I don't know if that's
interchange of. Yeah.
I think they can be used interchangeably, and people feel that they have a free pass to yell things at me on the street or that sort of thing. Once again, I want to say that I talked a little bit about my childhood experience, but bullying does not stop there.
No.
Especially when you're in the LGBT community. As an adult, you have to worry about it in your workplace, walking down the street, at a restaurant. It could happen anywhere. My partner and I took our kiddo to the Children's Museum, and we had people who felt comfortable with some verbal bullying.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
And it's,
Is this just when did that happen, Melly?
That happened within the last 2 years, I think, maybe the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So fairly recently. And it was kind of it was shocking more than anything. Why would someone, in this place where children are,
right.
And I don't think the museum would stand for any discrimination at all.
Right.
But this other parent felt
that they could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I want viewers to know that it doesn't stop, that bullying continues.
Oh, yeah, you don't just turn 18 and stop bullying people.
And you're out of school, no more bullying.
Right.
It's where there are people in any society,
Right.
there can be bullying at any level.
Yeah. What about you? How was you? I know you had a supportive family. Growing up, did you experience bullying? Are you experiencing any as an adult?
I think back when I was younger, 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago, I don't think it was bullying when we were kids back then.
It was more acceptable.
It was
in
more
some ways.
of picking on your friends.
Well, there's a difference, I think,
Right.
and I want to clarify because I feel like I don't want to poo-poo bullying, because I think there's a difference, and there's some merit maybe in being teased a bit by your own friends to toughen up a smidge. And there's a difference between that and being targeted, relentlessly targeted.
It's a big difference.
And it's not teasing. It's morphed into something far more than just kind of being ribbed. So yeah, I'm sorry.
Right,
but,
it is.
yeah.
No, it is. It is a big difference. I think back then when I was a child, me picking on one of my friends, them picking on me, it wasn't bullying back then. We were still friends at the end of the day. I think it's bullying now because this generation is just different. And it's all types of bullying, cyberbullying, because of your weight, because of your race, where you come from. I seen a kid from Africa get bullied at school because of his language. I think it's different now. And I don't really get bullied too often. I pretty much, like I told you, I stand my ground, and I feel like if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So if you let people talk to you any kind of way, then that's what they're gonna do.
How do you stop them, Brooke? Have you physically gotten into altercations? I mean,
I have never gotten into a physical altercation because of bullying, but verbal, yes. Yes, because you have to stop it at some point. You know, we teach people how to treat us by what we accept. So if I allow you to talk to me any kind of way because of my gender, my race, whatever, then you're gonna think that's okay, and it's gonna be a repetitive thing. Bullying leads to suicide.
Yes.
To me.
Yes. Yes.
And that's where I say that's where the difference come from. My friends back then weren't committing suicide because I took their milk while we were on the lunch line. They didn't go home and...
But that is different too than being bullied about who you are intrinsically, isn't it? I mean, if you get teased about a behavior that maybe you should get a little teased for, right? You know, because sometimes in a way we tease people to, let's be more socially acceptable. That's very different than being bullied because of your gender. Or your race. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because you're being teased about a behavior as opposed to being bullied about something that you can't change. You can change a behavior. You can't change that you're a person of color. You cannot change your sexuality.
That is true.
You cannot change your gender.
And oftentimes I realize people that get bullied the most, those are the ones that have low self-esteem. They don't really love themselves. You know, look at a person that's overweight. They don't really love themselves. You know, they're looking for sometimes a way out. And that's where the suicide comes in. You know, let me just take my life.
It's too much.
It's too much.
Well, Melly brought a good point, and you have as well. The bullying maybe at school stopped at school. But now we go home and you got it on your email, and you got it on your text, and you got it on your Facebook and your Twitters, and it's almost so relentless. It isn't, you don't get to come home and have respite anymore, right? I mean, it's there. So you think it's about low self-esteem. Do you have any thoughts where you think that this bullying comes from?
You know, I think something that's important, and maybe Brooklyn touched base on earlier, is that people are simply uneducated a lot of times. I think that is, so earlier I talked about the gender binary and me being non-binary. I'm gonna say that probably most of the viewers did not know that that's an option.
No, I don't think they probably did.
And
but
so,
do you really think education alone, I mean, I know really intelligent people who are twerps. It has nothing to do with their education.
I'm not talking necessarily about a school education. I'm talking about a life education where you kind of get to know people outside of yourself. This is kind of when we talk about privilege, a lot of times people who are privileged kind of stick to their own community and don't really meet people outside of that. And if they did, they might have some more understanding about life. And so I think kind of if people were to meet a transgender person and be able to have some conversation, it might be helpful. And I certainly think that this show has helped provide a voice and some education to people who didn't know anything about it. But wouldn't it be great if, like, you know, instead of making fun of an African student for their language, if people were interested instead
I agree.
of,
I guess my point
you know,
that I'm getting at, though, is I don't know anything about a Hindu religion.
Right.
But if I met a Hindu person, I can guarantee you that my ignorance isn't going to cause me to bully them. And I might meet a Hindu person, they could be a jerk, and I'm still not going to bully them. So to me, it's not just education.
I think ignorance sometimes goes hand in hand with preconceived notions.
Right.
Right? So you may not know anything about Hindu, but you might know some stereotypes.
True. Okay.
That's a possibility, right? I haven't.
But where do you think it morphs from, gee, I don't understand you, you're different from me, to crossing that line into somehow it's okay? I mean, I can be ignorant, I can be afraid, but I know I'm not going to cross that line and making fun of someone. Where do you think that comes from? I want to know how fear and ignorance somehow opens the door to bad behavior. Or if we're just trying to use an excuse and people are just, do you know what I'm saying? I mean, you must.
Certain things are taught in the home, if you ask me.
Okay,
Racism is taught in the home.
You think that's a learned behavior?
Racism is taught in the home.
Yep.
I grew up in New York City, in Brooklyn. I went to school with every kind of race. Chinese people, Arabs, Puerto Ricans, African Americans. We don't see color.
But your supervisor said, I'm married to a person of color. I have a child and you're not getting a promotion. Doesn't seem ignorant to me. That seems like a real choice. And that has nothing to do with ignorance, right? I mean, so it's something else. There's something about...
No, I think she was being ignorant, and I think that she just said that to try and make me feel good, like, oh, you don't
I'm going to
about
discriminate against you, but I know about you.
Right. You really don't know about me.
Right.
You know, your husband is your husband.
Right.
You don't
I
really
think
know
we
me.
can be surrounded by people of color and still have erroneous stereotypes.
Right.
You know what I mean? I know people who are married to people of color and are racist. I really do.
I've never seen a person that that type of situation, married to a black person, and it just doesn't work that way. And I'm gonna tell you why racism is taught in the home. At my job, white lady comes in with her kids. Now, you cannot tell me that this kid had to be maybe no more than 2, because he couldn't even really talk that good. Cashing them out. The little boy is in the cart. He goes, he's black, he's black. That means this kid never seen a black person before. Not that, you know, they're teaching him, you know, to be racist, but you know, why is he not, you know, in you know, around other children of color, so he can know that that's not okay to go in the store and point at somebody and go, he's black, he's black. I mean, he's a child, but
So he's being curious, yeah.
right, but
That's probably okay
it
to
just
be
goes
curious.
to shows how parents don't teach their children certain things. You know, that should have never been okay for him to do something like that, but he's a child. That's the parents' fault. But racism is definitely taught in the home. You know, that's like way back when, even with slavery and stuff like that. All of that stuff was taught to their children. The slave masters, they taught all that stuff to their children, how to treat the slaves when they got older. White people teach racism in the home. KKK, they teach white power. So-called they're Christians too. The white Bible, the black Bible. No, the Bible is the Bible. It's taught in the home. It's taught in the home.
What are your thoughts, Melly?
Yeah, I agree. I think definitely it's, I mean, sometimes these things are passed down from generation to generation. And maybe you might meet some people, but you're going to choose to hold on to your preconceived notions or what's learned. That definitely happens. And I won't say that my family is free of it. And my family is, everyone in my family is Puerto Rican. All different shades, all over the spectrum. Seeing us all lined up, you wouldn't even believe that we're related. But there's definitely racism still against other cultures.
Sure.
And you know, it's a difficult thing to address, but I definitely think fear plays into it. Like
For me,
you said.
I think the fear, even more, because why not, gee, someone's black, and then you just be curious.
Right,
But
right,
it almost
right.
seems to me to cross that line into bullying, to cross that line into violence, it almost seems you've got to have some sort of fear to justify what you're doing. This just can't be, well, they're different. You know, well, they're different, and
Right,
there's a
right,
reason that I'm afraid. You know what I
Right.
mean? Why do you think people are afraid of trans people?
Well, you know, and I think maybe this goes hand in hand with racism as well. I touched on before internalized, you know, maybe someone always wanted to present a little differently than they actually do. But they strongly believe that I have to follow these rules. I have to be within this box. If they're holding themselves to that standard,
Right.
they certainly need to police other people.
If they're not showing themselves compassion, how can they show any to you?
Exactly.
And I think trans people or gay, lesbian, bisexual people really are challenging what we saw as just this intrinsic male-female.
Right.
And all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, it's maybe more complicated and it's scary and we're going to put up these barriers. So, but why with the race too? It's intrinsic, right? Oh, you're different than me.
Right.
And we've grown up white and everybody's white, and now I see Brooklyn and oh my God, Brooklyn really isn't scary, but I hear that black people are scary. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Right.
You know.
So yeah, something that an example from my own family is my grandmother is probably as dark as Brooklyn.
Okay.
And when she first moved over here, she experienced a lot of racism because people just assumed that she was African American, and she, you know.
So, right, it wasn't even...
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say she understood it all because she didn't speak English and still doesn't really speak English.
Yeah.
And I think she's internalized some of that, and I've heard her say negative things about other people with dark skin. And I, you know, in my mind, it doesn't compute. It just doesn't make sense, but I think her negative experiences have kind of made her negative and jaded towards other folks. So I don't know, maybe some people are experiencing that as for the LGBT community, that maybe, you know, someone is perceived as a gay person or was teased about being gay, and they're actually not gay. Well, they might turn around and do that to other people.
Yeah. Brooklyn, you know, we went and got a coffee before we went on the show.
Yep.
And I said to you, how did that feel? Because I felt the cashier, right from the get-go, was being discriminatory towards you. And you really handled it with class. I mean, you kind of engaged her, got her to laugh, and then towards the end of the... Does that happen? I mean, is it so common you don't even notice it? I mean,
yes, it is. I expressed that to you before. Things like that happen all the time. And I don't want to say because I'm accustomed to it or I'm used to it, that's why I brush it off, because you brought it to my attention. I didn't even notice it. You know, I'm just being me.
But she was nice to me and was
definitely
really
was.
Kind of stern with you, and
I thought it was a different issue.
Yeah.
I thought it was maybe
you gave her
I'm holding up the line.
Yeah,
but it was something totally different.
I want to share a story. I have a great friend, Ori. I'm doing this for you. You wanted me to write a story. I'm going to share it verbally. So a couple weeks back, me and my friend Ori, he's a immigrant, and we went to go get a hotel room. And this is in a nice part of Massachusetts, Newburyport, Massachusetts, a nice hotel. And they looked at us straight in the eye. They looked at him and they said, we don't have any room. Now what they didn't know is that I had already called about an hour before, and they had 6 rooms. They didn't have no room. And Ori kind of just hunched over and he was gonna walk out. I said, we're not going. I said, you don't have any rooms at all? No, we don't have any room. I walked out, I called the hotel because my voice is still high pitched on the phone. And they had room. I said, you have rooms? Really? How many rooms do you have? We have 3 rooms. You sure you have 3 rooms? Yeah, we have 3 rooms. I walked right back in there. You can imagine their chagrin when they saw me waltz right back. I said, I thought you didn't have any room. Or, come on, Matthew, it's okay, it's okay. No, it's not okay. Well, the long and short of it is we told this to our Sacred Circle dancers, and they went and they took it to the Chamber of Commerce. But my point being is 2017, Massachusetts, and they wouldn't give us a room. And I couldn't say it was about being trans. It was clearly about Ori. Took one look at him, I could see it. What I'm noticing about my lovely friend, who I love, is he's hunched over a lot now. And I feel that he's just kind of accepting this treatment. One thing I said, right, LGBT, we're the most discriminated against, followed by race, followed by Muslim. And I feel that Ori has gotten accustomed to it. And I'm wondering if that's happening with you a little bit, Brooklyn.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I would never get accustomed to somebody treating me just any old kind of way, like I don't mean nothing. First of all, I love myself too much. So that's why I always tell you I don't really have good stories as to where growing up being a lesbian, because I didn't get picked on by my friends. Oh, yes, my male friends, they picked on me all the time because they didn't want me to play basketball with them. No, go play with the girls.
Because you're better than them, probably.
Probably. You know, they wanted me to go play with the girls, but that was their tough love.
Right.
Because I'm still friends with those same people to this day.
Sure.
That's why, you know, I was telling you about the difference of bullying and, you know, your friends just picking on you. Tough love back then.
Right.
But I love myself too much.
Well, what would you have done? Ori chose to leave. I actually, you know what I did? I want you to know what I did.
You always put me on the spot.
I did, because you know what I did? We went and we checked into the other hotel, and I went back and I said, I want to tell you about my friend. He had to come to this country at the age of 17. What were you doing when you were 17? I said, because he was running for his life. He had to leave his grandmother, his family, to get here. At 17, I bet they were thinking about the prom.
Probably.
Now, I will give credit where credit's due. They all rallied. What can we do? What can we do? He just wanted an apology, some acknowledgement. And yet, I guess it was just astounding to me that this still happens. And we're talking about these things. We're talking about these issues. So that's going to lead me to one of my last questions, because this is so important, because in this program we're extending the proverbial olive branch. What practical things can the average person do to help? I will not put you on first. I will put Melly on first. Melly, what do you want people of privilege to understand? What would you like them to do?
Well, I think the most important thing to understand, and I think that Brooklyn and you have done a great job of saying, is that it's not done.
Not even
Bullying's
close.
Not done.
Right.
Racism is not a thing of the past.
Right.
These things are still, if anything, regardless of whatever your political, wherever your political views, whatever lie, we know for a fact that after the recent election, there has been an uptick in racist hate crimes. In religious hate crimes. All of these things are only on the rise.
Jewish people are really getting a backlash. Anti-Semitism is really at an all-time high. LGBT people right now are...
Let's not forget the Muslim community, especially here in Maine.
Especially right now.
So I think it's important, if you see something that is not okay, to... Sometimes it's safer as a person of privilege to get involved. I gotta say, a lot of times I feel like I can handle things on my own. I don't always want somebody else to get involved. But if it seems appropriate, if it seems right, maybe check in. But, in the example I gave in my workplace, I knew that hearing it from somebody else would make a difference, instead of me once again being like
the bad guy.
Right.
Who has to educate.
Exactly. And I would also say watching this show is a great start, but for folks to continue to educate themselves. And to be aware of these issues. I mean, they're not going away.
Like, how about bathrooms? What could we do for bathrooms?
Right. I think advocating for more safe bathrooms, kind of like we were talking about, more, I think you called it trauma sensitive.
I think of it as trauma. I mean, I don't remember hearing all this hullabaloo over making bathrooms handicap accessible.
Right.
If the issue, in my mind, if the issue is one of safety, then we need trauma sensitive bathrooms and changing rooms.
Right.
Because clearly we're not as safe as we assumed.
Right.
And I hate to point out the obvious, but going to the bathroom is a basic human need. Everyone's got to do it. And if people really are not safe or feeling safe, then how can we make them, you know, more safe?
Right. So to point out the obvious also, everyone has gender neutral bathrooms at home, right?
Yeah.
So if we can make more individual bathrooms in public, people would probably feel safer.
Yeah.
You know, someone's probably not concerned that someone of another gender is using the same bathroom if they're not using it at the same time, right?
Right.
So maybe more individual bathrooms, advocating for those would be fine.
Yep.
Another piece of advice that I have is you don't have to comment on someone else, you know. If someone else is using the bathroom, unless they're attempting to attack you, attempting to get into your stall, say, you know, having some kind of unwelcome conversation with you, then don't engage them. Let people pee. I think that's pretty good advice. Yeah, pee in peace.
Pee in peace.
Yeah.
Brooke, I mean, what would you want people to know how to help? And I mean discrimination, period. So it doesn't even have to be specific to trans or race. How can people be effective? What would you want viewers to know?
I guess it's more of the person. It's not more of the person that's doing the harm, I'm guessing. It's more of the person that's not helping.
So the bystander.
Right. I mean, no one has to put themselves at risk to defend somebody else. Or.
But you can be a witness.
You can be a witness. Education is always the key. But I think people just need to be more supportive.
How would they show that? Like, part of what I'm thinking of is, okay, so I'm thinking, what can the average person do? And one is be aware, because you can't know, and then the education is great, but like,
support.
You know, why is Black History Month just 1 month? Why not learn history all year long? You're Black all year long.
I am.
That's not going to change. You're going to be transgender the rest of your life. So maybe having books in your home will make people feel safe, right? Could that be libraries, maybe not just highlighting these issues once a year, all the time, right?
Yeah.
If you own a business, run that ethically. Are you giving the person the same advantages? I think also something we don't want to talk about is maybe learn to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think something that we're not saying is this is going to require people to get out of their comfort zones.
Yes.
It's going to require maybe making some friends who are a little bit different than your group right now.
Having them over, getting a cup of coffee.
It's a new day and age.
Right.
You know, some things you just have to leave in the past.
Yeah. And you know, sometimes befriending someone means kind of getting through a language barrier.
Yes.
Get uncomfortable, you'll be better for it.
Be uncomfortable because you're not going to spontaneously combust just because you're a little uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Right? And if you want to judge something, just judge a person by their character.
Well, they can't do that if they don't give themselves a chance to get to know you.
Exactly.
Right. What else do you think, Brooke, that would be helpful for viewers?
I don't know. Melly kind of said it all. I totally agree with everything. That's really my opinion on that. You know, the support system, you don't have to risk yourself, but you can take the risk sometimes. Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not.
Maybe even knowing what the resources are.
Right.
Right? What resources, good responses, having your phone on speed dial for the police even. Because things are tough out there right now. They're tough out there. And so we want to be prepared, and we want people who are standing by to do something.
Right.
But you know, something I'm totally going to do a 180 right now, Brooklyn, I'm going to pick on you. I'm going to pick on you because we know each other and I can do this a little bit. tell viewers the difference, in your opinion. People going to see you like Matthew. I can already hear them. They're already calling me right now. They're already emailing me. What's the difference between Melly being trans, non-binary, and you? What's going on?
Just being a lesbian.
Okay.
The reason why I don't see myself as trans is because I've had no surgery done.
Neither have I.
No surgery done.
Melly hasn't either.
I haven't had any surgery.
Well, usually when women trans over to men, they get their breasts removed. I haven't had that done.
Do you think that makes someone transgender?
I think when you get deep into it, yes, you know, changing your body.
You must get called sir a lot.
All the time.
And how do you handle that?
I answer people.
So it doesn't bother you?
No, it doesn't.
Okay,
No,
okay.
It doesn't bother me. I just answer them. And the hormones, taking testosterone, the facial hair, and most of the time they cut their hair. They don't have long hair like me anymore.
You could be a hippie.
I could be. I don't smoke pot, so I can't be a hippie.
Okay.
So,
Well, you mean you got PTSD, so that's an option that's on the table.
But yeah, that's really the difference for me. The whole, it's not all physical, and it's emotional too. Because,
yes. Yep.
And those things take a toll on your body, and going through that change. I am at an age right now where my mind is set. I am not doing anything to my body. I don't want to, switch over and be a full male.
Do you feel like Melly a little bit though? Can you relate to what they're saying, that you're comfortable in your own skin, but you feel masculine? I mean, your presentation's very your energy is more masculine than mine. So talk about it a little bit. I know I can hear them.
It's a funny thing because it's weird, because the only time I feel like I'm a man is probably in the bedroom. And that ain't all the way true. I think I just have come to terms and accepted the fact that I was born a woman. This is, how God made me, and this is who I'm gonna die as.
How's your spirit and your head feel? Like a woman? Aha. This be a therapy session here, I think.
Maybe. I just don't, I have never drilled it in myself that sometimes I do just feel like a man, maybe. Yeah.
So you feel non-binary, you feel on the spectrum then?
Well, I'll say this. I can feel like a man, but I know I'm a woman.
I think that's great.
That's that's the simplest I can get for you. I feel like a man. I feel like maybe I should have been a man, but I know I'm a woman.
Because of your body?
Because of my body.
So the way you feel internally in your mind is separate?
Right.
Okay. And for you, it's not?
Right. And, but I really love Brooklyn's experience and like what you're sharing, because it just proves that so many people, regardless of how they identify, just can be all over the place on the spectrum.
Right.
It's so great to have someone who feels comfortable identifying as a woman, but is okay with answering to he or him.
Oh, Brooklyn, I
right?
have to constantly, I'm always mucking up her pronouns.
Right.
And you don't care.
No.
You don't care at all. Yeah.
And I think that's like a fantastic experience, and more proof that like, the gender spectrum is all over the place. We get to choose how we define ourselves.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people don't know that. We get to choose how we identify.
Right.
Brooklyn has just shared pretty clearly how she identifies. And that's fantastic. For me, I identify the way that I do. I haven't had any surgeries.
And ultimately, we're talking about this because we all know it doesn't matter how they think about this. It doesn't matter if they understand it. You don't get to not be safe because you don't understand.
Exactly.
You don't get to not be safe with someone or inclusive because you don't get it. right? We all get the same promotions. We all get the same basic respect. We all get rooms at hotels, and we all get served at Dunkin' Donuts.
Yep.
No matter our race, our gender, our age. Sound good?
Sound good.
I think we're going to wrap this one up, whether we're out of time or not. I think that, viewers, you've learned a lot. We've talked about bullying, we've talked about gender, we've talked about race, and I think it's very clear that we have a lot of work to do. We got folks that need to know that you are our allies. We have folks that need to know that you're going to have safe bathrooms, safe space with us, and that you have a willingness to be uncomfortable, that you have a willingness to be corrected. Those things are not indicative of your character. What's indicative of your character is your willingness to grow and change. So we thank you so much for watching this episode, and I really thank you for both of you being here, your bravery.
Absolutely.
And, yes.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you wanted to add? Any final thoughts?
Just thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next month.